Hi, this is Mario Depeine, and this is Setting the Record Straight. This is episode 3C, and this episode is called They Use Their Light to Stop the Darkness. Because you are the light of the world. This one is a continuation of the whole idea of what is the role of the Christian, especially in dealing with people who are oppressed and who are suffering injustice. There are times where, as Christians, we have said things like, well, you see, Jesus did not address people who were in power. Jesus did not get into politics. Jesus did not say things like that. Okay, that's not true. Jesus spoke about the people who were in charge at the time. And you got to remember something. Don't use today's standards to judge what Jesus did back then. When Jesus was doing his ministry before he was crucified and resurrected, he lived under a theocratic government. The government that Jesus lived under was a theocracy. It was ruled by people who believed in God, and they believed that every rule that they had to govern the people was to be based on God's word. The people like the Pharisees, the Sadducees, those were the people in charge of that government. They were under Roman rule at the time, but the Romans let them rule themselves, where they could decide, we want to crucify this man based on our law, and the Romans had to go, okay, we'll let you do it. And that's what they did. They stoned people based on their laws. So that was a theocracy. So here's some things that Jesus said about the people who were in power at the time. In Matthew 23, verses 1 through 7, Jesus talks about the people in charge, the theocracy. Then Jesus said to the crowd and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must be careful to do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. They tie up heavy, cumbersome loads and put them on other people's shoulders. But they themselves are not willing to lift a finger to move them. Everything they do is for people to see. They make their phylacteries wide and the tassels on their garments long. They love the place of honor at banquets and the most important seats in the synagogue. They love to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to be called rabbi by others. This is Matthew 20, verses 25 to 28. And this is a passage where Jesus is answering a mother's request. She had her two sons, and she wanted one to sit on his right and one to sit on his left. And Jesus is saying, hey, I can't make that decision. But the other disciples were upset about the fact that these two wanted to be in charge. So this was Jesus' response. And what he does is he talks about the governing officials of the times. Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So when Peter was confronted about paying taxes, saying, hey, does your master, Jesus, pay taxes? Peter prematurely said, yeah, he pays taxes. Of course he does. But Jesus had not paid the tax yet, the temple tax. But look what Jesus said about the kings of the earth. He said, what do you think, Simon? He asked. From whom do the kings of the earth collect duty and taxes? From their own children or from others? From others, Peter answered. Then the children are exempt, Jesus said to him. But so that we may not cause offense, go to the lake and throw out your line. And he tells Peter how to get the coins that he needs to pay the taxes from the mouth of the fish. He said, you're going to find a 4 drachma coin so that we can pay our taxes, yours and mine. You see, Jesus had a commentary about the unfairness of taxes. Anyone who's not related to the king has to pay taxes, but the king's children will not have to pay any taxes. So you could replace king and use president if you want. But the point is, Jesus made comments. Jesus gave insights on those issues. He did not live in a vacuum. He lived life. He did comment on the people who were in charge to his disciples. Here's some other things to keep in mind. Daniel was working with King Nebuchadnezzar, and he was a trusted official in that government. And he challenged Nebuchadnezzar based on what God wanted him to say. Here's something else to think about. Nehemiah was a governor. He was a governor, so he was in the, if you want to call it, politics. When Nathan realized that David had murdered Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, Nathan the prophet confronted the king because the king was wrong. When Mordecai went to Queen Esther and said, you got to help us because there's a plan to annihilate all the Jews. Esther was hesitant. In fact, the first time she was approached, she said, I'm not doing it because everybody knows you cannot go to the king unless you are summoned. And then her uncle Mordecai at the time said, hey, don't think that if this happens that you alone will be the one saved, because you will perish as well. And God will find somebody else to help the people. So Esther reconsidered. She prayed, she fasted. She had other people join her in fasting, and she decided to approach the king. But she also said, if I perish, I perish. But it was up to Esther to stand in the gap. It was up to Esther to say, I need to help these people, otherwise they will be destroyed. She was the light of the world at that time. And her decision to step up saved lots of people. So we see that there are many examples in the Bible. I only went over a few of men and women who intervened, talked to government officials, confronted government officials on behalf of the people, or just made references to the nature of people who are in charge in that time. Because of Esther, the king changed the law that was written against the Jews that was set in place so that they would be annihilated. We have the power to make impact by getting laws changed as well. We should not, as Christians, restrict ourselves or limit ourselves. The power that God has given us is enough to do all the work that we need to do to defeat Satan in any area that we need to defeat him. And of course, one of the main areas that I've been discussing in these last 3 episodes is taking care of the oppressed, fighting injustice, and making sure that as Christians, we take our place in helping those who are deeply in need right now. We cannot just say, I'm going to pray for that person. We cannot just say, at some point, somebody's going to study the Bible with that person. We need to help people now because we are dealing with people who are getting killed and who are being oppressed right now. I encourage you to pray, to really find out what is God's Spirit putting on your heart that you can do to fight injustice, what you can do to fight oppression, because you are approved by God to do that. You are equipped by God to. There is nobody more equipped than you as a Christian to fight against injustice and oppression. But you know what? You got to take notice. Just like everybody else in the past who spoke up against injustice, unrighteousness, you will be persecuted. It's amazing how you know what it means to open your mouth. And sometimes you're happy that somebody says that's not your place, because you go, okay, good, I don't have to do anything. But the reality is, God does hold us accountable for that. I know for me personally, I have done a lot of things to speak up for people that I thought did not have a voice. I also knew that anytime I spoke up for people, I was putting a target on my back. I also know that there are times where I stepped up and spoke up for people, and my fellow Christians looked at me like something was wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with me, and nothing's wrong with you if you decide to step up to help those who are oppressed or help those who are unjustly treated. In fact, that is the right thing to do. I'm understanding more that the world will not be better unless the lights of the Christians are getting brighter and brighter. If we are to judge the world, then shouldn't we be judging the situations that we see around us in our different cities, our workplaces, our neighborhoods, our countries, wherever it is? Of course, there are certain things that you go, no, that's not my place. Let it work out itself. But there are other things where you are in the middle of it and you say, I think there's something I could do about this. There must be some little thing I could do. Maybe I could collect money. Maybe I could donate money. Maybe whatever. You know best what you are equipped to do. But don't choose the option of not doing anything. That's all I'm saying. You have to do something. In Romans chapter 12, verses 6 through 8, it says, we have different gifts according to the grace that has been given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, then do it diligently. If it is mercy, do it cheerfully. What is your gift, or what are your gifts? Some people can clearly see one gift and others can see that they have multiple gifts. Talk to your friends, talk to people who know you, and ask them what your gifts are. Sometimes the gifts that are clear to others about us are not clear to us. So ask someone else. You see, what this is saying is that not everybody has to do the same thing. And not everybody has to do the same thing to the same degree. But I believe everybody needs to do something. Maybe you are the one that will be doing a lot of praying, but at least you're praying about it. Maybe you are the one that needs to do some writing about it. Maybe you're the one that needs to do a video like I'm doing a video. Maybe you're the one that needs to write a song about it. Maybe you're the one that needs to write a poem about it. Maybe you're the one that needs to go protest to bring awareness within what God says about self-control, love, patience. Follow all the guidelines that the scriptures say. But you still need to be the light of the world. Maybe you're the one that needs to give a speech about it. Maybe you're the one that needs to be in your church and you say, you know what? Let's talk about racism. Let's make sure that we are addressing our perspective on racism. Maybe you're the one that needs to talk about oppression. Maybe you're the one that needs to say, let's have a meeting about this. But what I'm saying is somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to do something. And the Christians need to lead the way. I want God to say, you used my spirit powerfully. And I lived in you and I saw all those things. Just like you saw. Thank you for listening, and please share this with someone else that you believe will benefit from listening to these words.